Hi, this is your video for Pier-Luc in Canada. This is Max Lazar testing your computer 8.1 Volvo Penta GIH from 2007. Your complaint is code 0336 current input signal, and that is not happening in here. I just want to give you a little brief of what we have here so you understand better. All right, so this is the 5-word reference. Your computer has two, which actually are a connector internally together, and that is working perfectly. And I just marked that so I know which computer is yours, and that is your sticker in the front. We have a simulation running right now here, probably almost for an hour. All your injectors are working 100%, and we have perfectly injection time in all of them based on the values that I'm given. The fuel pump is on. We do have the horn on because I have some things unplugged on purpose to make sure the logic on the computer is working, but we have all coils and all injectors working, everything 100%. I'm now going to take you over to my screen so you can see these are the values. We're running the boat right now at 750 RPMs, which is just idle. Again, the values that I'm giving: manifold pressure, engine load, coolant temperature, manifold air temperature, which you can see here, oil pressure. Let me just make sure. Battery voltage and some other values in here. I don't have the throttle actuator connector, throttle body, because it's not necessary, so I'm just simulating the TPS, which will be the lever. That's all I need to actually make a run for my testing. If it would be a complaint on the throttle actuator or throttle body, then I will request you to send it to me included with the computer, but that was not your complaint, so that's what I didn't. Okay, so going into what the signals that you see here, that's my oscilloscope connected. I'm using for this my picoscope right here. So I got channel 1 and 2, which is the blue and the red, connected to the cam and the crank sensor signals coming from the simulator to the computer. And again, it's happy. The reason I said it's happy because if I go back, I saw the history, which I will send to you, that yeah, that code was present. But if I go now, I'm going to erase the codes, then reread the codes, and we're going to have, pressure low and other codes like the TPS1, and so that's just redundancy that is not happening. Oil pressure high, again, I put that on purpose in there. But we have no crank sensor signal because what I am giving the computer is happy with. So the cam and the crank sensor signals are correct for the computer, and it's happy with like that. All right, so I'm going to put these values off and explain you what we have here and why it's so important. So your boat has a cam and a crank that needs to be in correlation. So this cam, let me make this signal a little smaller. So one crank revolution, or at 720 revolution of the engine, which is 2 turns of the crank, is from here to here. So as you can see, from 2 turns of the engine, let me just rethink on that. Yes, well, we will have 50% of the cam sensor signal will be on 5 volts, and then 50% of that signal will be off. And then that's, the cam sensor signal is pretty easy, pretty simple. It's just on and off. It's nothing special in that. But then if we go over to the crank sensor signal, it is a lot more intricate, and it's very important that these two are in sync in the specific sequence, because otherwise then you will be losing injectors or spark plugs, so a spark fire, because these are not in sync. Or it will give you a code for that. The next thing, let me turn one of the channels off, which is the channel for the cam sensor, so we just see the crankshaft in the picture. As we can see here, I'm going to get a little closer. We have a narrow, 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 and then wider, 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 wider. Kind of like 5 times and 5 times, but that's not just the way it is. It goes 5 times narrow, 5 times wider, and then narrow, wider, wider, wider. So 1 time and 3 times, and then narrow, narrow, wider, wider, now 2 times and 2 times, and then narrow, 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 wide. So now 3 times narrow, 1 time wider, and then narrow, wide, 1 time, 1 time, and then it start the sequence again, but this is only 50%, and then it happens again on a 1 crank revolution. So this is, sorry, in a 2 crank revolution. It's very important that this happens like that, because otherwise it will set up that code. Things that needs to be checked in your end is that the gap of the crank sensor signal, so the crank sensor, the sensor where it fits into the engine is not rusted. It was set up with the right tool. It's a paper tool that you have to put in there to actually give the distance from the crank sensor to this reluctor in the engine. Let's say my finger will be the sensor. It cannot be too far away or too close, because otherwise the sensor signal will change. The other thing, if everything is correct like that and still you get the code, I would recommend you to get a borescope in the hole where the crank sensor signal goes. It's just, borescope is just a small camera, and check the reluctor, make sure all these tubes are not bent. Or if your mechanic can have an oscilloscope like in here connected to the crank sensor signal and the cam sensor signal, and make sure that we get these signals like that. If they can send me a file like that, I can help you, guide you a little better. Again, nothing wrong with your computer here. The test passed. I got nothing to go by but just the code, but it's not related to the computer, so you need to check your boat. Hopefully this can help you, and you can find the problem, but it's not in here. Thank you so much.